What if I told you that a secret cult convinced doctors, engineers, and politicians, people you'd never expect, to take part in ritualistic deaths? Between 1994 and 1997, over 70 people across Switzerland, Canada, and France died in horrifying ceremonies orchestrated by the Order of the Solar Temple. But these weren't ordinary rituals. Victims were poisoned, drugged, or even shot, their bodies arranged in star formations and burned in deliberate fires. How did two men, Joseph de Mambro and Luc Jouret, manipulate some of society's most educated individuals into believing they'd ascend to a paradise orbiting a distant star? Were these deaths the result of blind faith, or was something far darker at play? Stay with me as we uncover the shocking truths behind this chilling cult. Because by the end of this video, you might just question how far the human mind can be pushed into darkness. Let's dive in. Our story begins in the 1980s with two men, Joseph de Mambro, a French jeweler with a fascination for mysticism, and Luc Jouret, a Belgian doctor with a magnetic personality. De Mambro was known for his visions and claimed he could communicate with higher beings. Jouret, on the other hand, was a speaker who could capture any audience, promising them eternal enlightenment. Together, they created the Order of the Solar Temple. De Mambro and Jouret blended Christianity, New Age philosophies, and doomsday prophecies. They preached that the world was ending and that the chosen ones could escape this corrupted world by transiting to a paradise orbiting the star Sirius. But to make this journey, they needed complete faith and absolute obedience. Have you ever wondered what might make someone, especially someone educated and successful, believe in such a promise? Is it a longing for meaning, or could it be something more sinister? So, what exactly is a cult, and how does it differ from regular religious or social groups? Cults often revolve around a single, charismatic leader, or a small group of leaders who have absolute control over members' beliefs, lifestyles, and often their finances. They usually offer followers a sense of purpose or belonging, but in exchange, they demand complete loyalty and obedience. In many cases, they isolate members from their families, creating an environment where the leader's word is absolute. Unlike other cults, the Solar Temple targeted society's elite. These weren't vulnerable people. They were doctors, politicians, and engineers. Yet, de Mambro and Jouret knew exactly how to pull them in. Their trick? Impress and deceive. To reinforce his divine powers, de Mambro staged elaborate miracles. He rigged rooms with hidden projectors to make members believe they were witnessing supernatural light shows, messages from the masters. Followers were in awe, not realizing they were simply manipulated by hidden projectors and lighting effects. This mix of charisma and manipulation allowed de Mambro and Jouret to enforce absolute control, persuading people to donate money, cut off family ties, and eventually prepare for transit to another world. Many of the cult's locations featured a dedicated chapel or ceremonial room, which was the focal point for rituals. These rooms were often adorned with symbols of the sun, including sun motifs and colors associated with light and warmth, such as gold and yellow. The space was typically dimly lit, enhancing the atmosphere of mystery and spirituality. Candles and incense were commonly used to create a sense of reverence and to invoke a mystical ambiance. A prominent feature of the ceremonial room was an altar, which was central to many rituals. The altar often displayed various religious symbols, images of deities, and objects of significance to the cult, such as crystals or artifacts believed to have spiritual properties. Ritual items, including chalices, ceremonial knives, and other implements used in the rites, were typically arranged on or around the altar. Imagine seeing what you think is a miracle. Would that convince you to trust the person behind it? How far would you be willing to go to hold on to that belief? For members, life in the Solar Temple wasn't just about rituals, it was about isolation and obedience. Members were instructed to cut ties with outsiders, even family members who didn't believe in the temple's teachings. This isolation made them increasingly dependent on Mambro and Jouret. The leaders claimed this dependence would prepare them for their journey to Sirius, but the cult environment took a toll on members. They became paranoid, fearful, convinced that they had no escape but transit. Mambro warned of government conspiracies against them, heightening the members' anxiety and reinforcing the belief that only the solar temple could save them. One psychological concept relevant here is what's known as the sunk cost fallacy. In the context of cults, this is when members have invested so much time, money, and emotion into the group that they find it hard to leave, even if they realize something is wrong. They feel as though abandoning the cult would make all their sacrifices worthless. This is why, even as the solar temple's corruption was exposed, many followers found themselves trapped, unable to leave despite the rising danger. Isolation, fear, and dependency, are these signs of devotion or simply a result of psychological control? At what point does faith become manipulation? The horror truly began on October 4, 1994. Swiss police arrived at two chalets in Chéry and Grange-sur-Salvan, Switzerland. Inside, they found an unthinkable scene: 23 bodies arranged in a star formation, some holding hands, others with plastic bags over their heads. The smell of gasoline lingered in the air. These weren't natural deaths. Each body was meticulously placed and dressed in ritualistic robes. Most of the victims were drugged or poisoned. Autopsies revealed that some had been forced or coerced into death, showing signs of struggle. And for those who couldn't be forced, there were gunshot wounds. Fires were intentionally set to burn both bodies and evidence. That same week, a second scene emerged across the Atlantic in Canada. In Morin Heights, Quebec, a fire revealed 5 more victims, burned beyond recognition in another ritualistic setting. Investigators noted similar patterns in both the Swiss and Canadian cases: ceremonial clothing, poison, and intentionally set fires. What do you think? Could these have all been suicides, or is it more likely that they were murdered to protect a secret? And if so, who was behind it? The following year, in December 1995, French police discovered another horror. 16 more members of the Solar Temple were found dead in the isolated Vercors Mountains in France. Just like in Switzerland and Canada, the victims were dressed in ritual attire and burned in a fire that police believe was set intentionally. Investigators described the setup as ritualistic, with bodies arranged in specific positions that echoed earlier scenes in Switzerland and Canada. By now, a dark pattern had emerged. A combination of poison, fire, and ceremonial clothing was present at every location. Despite this consistency, one haunting question remained: were these suicides or murders? Some followers had willingly taken part in these transits, while others seemed to have been forced. By the end, more than 70 members had died in these gruesome rituals. As the group's paranoia grew, so did Mambro's. He became convinced that his own son, Tony Mambro, was an antichrist figure sent to ruin the Solar Temple. Obsessed with this twisted belief, Mambro ordered Tony's murder, claiming it was necessary to purify the group. This was no longer a cult of enlightenment. It had become a cult of destruction. By 1994, the cult was crumbling. Some members, horrified by Mambro's behavior, tried to leave. Others sued for the return of donations, exposing the cult's financial corruption. But instead of facing defeat, Mambro and Jouret doubled down, urging loyal followers to prepare for the ultimate transit. Under mounting pressure, the leaders orchestrated the ritualistic deaths as a final act of control. In their eyes, this mass death would immortalize the Solar Temple and fulfill their apocalyptic prophecy. As news spread, Swiss, Canadian, and French authorities launched an international investigation, shocked by the sheer brutality of the deaths. Forensic evidence, however, was limited. Mambro and Jouret's meticulous planning had destroyed much of it. Families of the victims demanded answers, but the full truth was difficult to piece together. Survivors' guilt is common among those who leave cults, especially in cases like this one, where members who didn't transit were haunted by the deaths of their friends and family members. Many former cult members have reported feeling isolated and lost, and some even question if they made the right choice. The aftermath of the Solar Temple left both survivors and the public with questions that may never be answered. The world watched in disbelief. How could so many people be led to their deaths in such a calculated, brutal way? And how had these two men managed to convince even the most educated, successful individuals to follow them to the end? Do you think it's possible for intelligent people to fall under this kind of spell? Or does it take a particular vulnerability? Would you ever see yourself joining a cause like this? In the years since, countless theories have emerged. Some say powerful figures supported the cult from the shadows, while others believe that parts of the solar temple still operate today, hidden but waiting. Could there still be followers out there, keeping the cult's twisted beliefs alive? Or was this simply the tragic end of a group manipulated to the point of no return? Well, if you're as fascinated by these questions as I am, then you're in the right place. Hit subscribe and like this video because in the future, I'll be bringing you more real-life crime stories like this one. Dark, disturbing, and thought-provoking. Stay with me on this journey, and together we'll explore the mysteries of the human mind and the most shocking cases from around the world. This is Ubaid, your introverted investigator, signing off for today. But trust me, you won't want to miss the next case. You can also watch this video in Hindi dub, link in the description.